Okay guys, part 2 of does weightlifting or lifting weights stunt your growth? So we kind of mentioned some of the factors around there being a bit of confusion around limiting of a growth plate versus final stature, some of the mechanisms of how you can actually injure a growth plate being high impact collisions, and how actually there's a lot more controllable factors in a gym or resistance training scenario than on a pitch. So the second part to this is that bone tissue is live. It's an adaptive tissue, and as such it requires stress. So it's just like a muscle or a tendon, and that it requires a stimulus to provoke adaptation. So a great flip side to this, as an example, is astronauts. So astronauts have an issue when they go into space because gravity is removed and they're floating about. They're not getting gravitational load through their skeleton, which means they're actually diminishing in bone tissue. So they've actually had to come up with a number of interventions to try and reduce this. So when astronauts return to Earth, they're not actually in a really decrepit state. So things like kind of high-end compression suits, a lot of resistance training interventions that I do out there through bands and eccentric overload and stuff like that. So bone tissue actually requires stress for adaptation. So whether that's gravitational through things like jumping and landing, that's external resisted being added, what we're doing is actually provoking the skeleton to grow. So a great study here on bone mineral density was shown that in youth weightlifters versus age-matched controls and even adults, youth weightlifters had higher levels of bone mineral density. So actually that extra stimulus, extra impact they were getting from their training was improving their bone mineral density and their bone mineral content. So that's actually quite a big factor, because we know as we reach adulthood, whatever bone mass we have stored, that's capped, and we're going to start losing it over our lifetime, the remaining bit of our lifetime. So actually, if anything, we want to try and store higher levels of bone mineral content to give us that head start, because we will diminish. Whereas if we don't do any resistance training, we're just average human being, we're going to be at increased risk of fractures as we move forward, because that is only ever diminishing. It's never going to keep going up. So actually we can use resistance training in adolescence to help improve bone mineral content, to give us a head start against aging, to prevent risk factors. This is a big thing actually for adolescent females. So if you think about one of the things that we can do, so it's not just about athletic performance, it's about well-being into our lifetime. So we know that females are at greater risk of osteoporosis in older age. So actually, if we improve the quality of bone mineral content at a younger age, we're giving youth female athletes a head start against things like osteoporosis. So as their peers who don't do resistance training are beginning to diminish, they're diminishing, but not at the same kind of critical mass of people who have spent time resistance training, because we've got an increased quality of bone tissue. So lifting weights is not only safe for youth athletes, it's actually beneficial. So if we look at things like bone mineral density, we can reduce the risk of fractures, we can improve the robustness of a bone, we can even benefit from it not just now and in the athletic career, but even in old age. That the work you've done in that adolescent period can actually help you prevent osteoporosis in the long term. So let's stop the myth that lifting weights stunts growth. It doesn't. It's actually beneficial. It's safe if it's done properly in an appropriate training program with an appropriately trained coach and there's appropriate supervision. It's absolutely safe and it's endorsed. So let's get over this myth. Let's not lose one of our best tools for improving well-being in our athletes.